For almost a year now, I've been judging a few movies for a little festival called the Liftoff Global Network. They have festivals all over the world, but I specifically went to their London festival. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to the cast, actors, writers, directors, and the people in charge of the festival. They were all so lovely and so creative. That's me, by the way, just in case you couldn't tell. I mean, I do wear the same suit in every video. Usually I'm assigned films from all over the world, and if I enjoy the movie enough, I'll actually try and have it nominated for that specific festival. In particular, I was assigned several movies for the Austin, Texas lineup, and I want to talk about a certain film that I saw for that lineup. It's a documentary called Guerrilla Filmmaker.
Some of the best advice I ever got was from an attorney, an entertainment attorney in Dallas, who told me, quote, "People with no money shouldn't make movies." And he was right. I found that out the hard way.
Guerrilla Filmmaker follows a director called Les Branson, who wanted to make a film called Blood is Thicker. It took him 27 years to make this film, as he had a lot of difficulties. Filming with one light, not a big enough budget, a mutiny that almost dismantled the making of the film. Blood is Thicker is an action exploitation movie. The film follows a Zen enthusiast called Lenny Bennett. He comes back home to his hometown in Texas, where he discovers that his town has been surrounded by corrupt sheriffs, pimps, and white supremacist drug dealers, and he has to stop them and take back his home. Guerrilla Filmmaker combines interviews with Les Branson himself, as well as the very interesting cast with this film, but also incorporates a lot of old footage that was shot back in the late 1990s. Guerrilla Filmmaker is both crazy and heartwarming at the same time. I was so inspired by this film, I just had to reach out to him. And with the help of his very good friend David Dixon, who also acts as his director of photography, I was able to have an interview with the man himself. Before we continue, I want to give a big special thank you to David Dixon. David Dixon is the director of photography for Thicker Than Blood, but he also filmed his own version of my interview with Les Branson as well. I incorporate several of my Zoom meeting clips along with his clips that he filmed of Mr. Branson. If it wasn't for him, not only would that film have not been released, but this interview probably wouldn't have happened. Thank you. This is Les Branson, and this is his story. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you may be. This is Keanu Reese, and we have an exclusive interview with a very interesting gentleman. He is a playwright, a screenwriter, and a filmmaker. Winner of the most ambitious film award at the Columbia Gorge International Festival and the best action film at the Buckus Film Festival. His name is Les Branson, and with him is his director of photography, Mr. David Dixon. How are you guys doing?
Very good, thank you.
Great, great. Thank you for your time, sir. So let's start off. Where did you grow up then?
Well, I grew up in Chicago the first 10 years of my life, and then our family moved down to the greater Southwest. We settled for around a year in Roswell, New Mexico. Then we moved to Fort Worth, and then the general area.
Sorry about that. I was going to say, any memories of Chicago before moving to Dallas?
Yes, I have wonderful memories of Chicago, the Great Blizzard in 1967. But my most cherished memory is when my mother would drop me off at the cinema. That was my babysitter. Rather than hire a babysitter to watch me, she would just drop me off at the cinema. And back then you could buy one ticket, but you could stay all day long and watch the movies over and over. And so that's where I was first introduced to spaghetti westerns and crime dramas. And somehow as a youngster, I got into those type movies. Even as a child, and those are very vivid memories. And plus the public schools in Chicago are really good. I received a good foundation in education there.
That's really nice. Yeah, I was going to ask you about your influences, basically like Fistful of Dollars. So that's where you saw it. What was the name of the cinema again? Sorry.
The theater itself was called The Lyric.
The Lyric. That sounds lovely. So, in Guerrilla Filmmaker, you talk about your uncle who, am I right in saying he was a Vietnam War veteran?
That was actually my cousin, my first cousin, Joe Earl Gilbert, from Wichita Falls, Texas.
I see, yes. So, because you said you were very inspired by your uncle and cousin, any fond memories about them? Anything that sticks out to you? Any funny memories you have of them?
Yeah, well, I have a lot of memories of my cousin Joe. He was quite the character. Uh, he uh, he drank a little too much. You know, he's a great guy, but he drank a little too much, and I think he was haunted by the demons that he, uh, possibly encountered, in Vietnam and stuff. His own personal demons, and so he did things like camp out under bridges. He would, drink a lot of
Mm.
alcohol and camp out under bridges or ride on freight trains. And he had some interesting anecdotes about that. And then sometimes he would talk about his war experiences, and those were rather graphic and probably something
Mm.
I shouldn't share with the audience, but those were rather fascinating.
Absolutely. I do understand, like, let's not go too much into that, obviously. Was he a big inspiration on your work then?
Only in that one regard, uh, regarding the play War Boots, where he's a central character, but overall he wasn't that big of an influence. He was one of many influences, and I kind of admired him for his rugged individualism and his ability to just take off on a freight train and survive. And so that was rather fascinating. But he wasn't as big of an influence as one might imagine, but he was certainly central to that character in my first play, War Boots, where he plays the hobo. I've always had this fascination with hobos, and it's kind of a central theme in a lot of my movies. This hobo character, mysteriously shows up somehow or is portrayed in one way or another. And that's kind of what I got from my cousin Joe.
Yes, because I was going to say actually, because I want to talk about the Marxist hobo, which is footage that's shown in Guerrilla Filmmaker. Am I right in saying that's you playing that central character in the Marxist hobo?
That is indeed, yes, that's my character I created, the Marxist hobo, and I love that character. I love playing that character. That's when I got my first experience really in front of the camera and behind the camera. That was kind of where I lost my cherry in filmmaking, so to speak, was at that point in time. And I can't thank my friend Taylor Hayden enough for giving me that opportunity to be on his show. He had a show called Voodoo Plastic Arm, and it was
Oh, yes, yes.
cable access, community television.
Absolutely. And speaking of Tyler Hayden, am I right in saying that you actually met David Dixon through Taylor?
I did indeed. Yeah. David Dixon and Taylor Hayden, they were really instrumental in helping me launch my career. I mean, they were kind of always gave me the inspiration that I could do it. They're the ones who said, "Hey, this is really good," and I'm like, yeah, I wasn't really that impressed with my own work, so to speak. I didn't really feel that it had that kind of potential. But David and Taylor were the ones who said, "Man, this is really good. We ought to try it." They gave me the courage to try it, and they also had their own skills that they brought to the table. Without them, I feel like I probably would have never made a movie without the inspiration of those two friends.
Absolutely. Like they're friends for life, I assume, because Dixon is still here, so that's really nice.
Yeah, we David and I have completed 2 movies in about the last 14 months, and through his editing skills and his computer skills, he's been able to do all that from the old footage. So David's really the glue that holds it together with his camera skills, his editing skills, his knowledge of computers and stuff. I'm very thankful for David being a part of my team.
He's absolutely amazing, Mr. Dixon, because I will ask a few more questions about the filming of Blood is Thicker. I want to quickly go back to Tyler, because in the film Guerrilla Filmmaker, they talk about how Tyler is like hilarious, basically, and really funny. Any funny stories? Anything that made you like, he's so funny, like made you think that about Taylor?
I wish I could think back of something that just right offhand, but in all honesty, it was such an agonizing process for me because I was in so far over my head. Uh, I I can't really think of anything. I know one thing: he was upset because he damaged a muffler on his car, and
Okay.
and which was unfortunate because he didn't know how to ride on old rutted out country roads, and so it kind of damaged his car a little. And he was kind of and I didn't mean to laugh, but I did laugh. It was just comical the way he addressed me about that, and so I did laugh at that. But hopefully he forgives me now. And there's even a clip in the movie about it in Guerrilla Filmmaker about him saying that I was going to pay for his muffler if I came there. So that was kind of comical.
Yeah. Did you ever pay for it?
I did not. So he
It
never
is what
done
it
me
is.
for it, so I never paid it.
Nah, let's just pretend that didn't happen. So that's perfectly fine then. So bear with me one moment. So obviously, as you said, you basically were raised in the cinema then. Obviously, you mentioned Fistful of Dollars and like all the spaghetti westerns. When's the first time in your life did you start filming things though? Was it actually when you started Blood is Thicker, or did you start like have a camera when you were younger, for example, or?
No, I didn't get started until after I met the actors in my theater company, and that was my first experience with a camera. Other than, I was a shutterbug there for a while. I won a camera in a raffle when I was in my early 20s, and I took some pictures, which actually are some that appear in the documentary. But no, I've never really been was never immersed in that aspect of movie making until I met Taylor and David. And that's when
Again,
we
they give you
started
that
doing his
inspiration.
show Voodoo Plastic Arm.
You wrote War Boots then. You say somewhere in the documentary about War Boots that you were somewhat burnt out after the reception with your plays then. Why was that then? Was it just you were writing too much, or was it the reception to your plays, or?
I think it was just a lot of it was trying to work in the real world. My job in the real world, required a lot of my time. So all of my early efforts at theater were really very taxing on me as far as having the time to do other things in life. I was devoting my time so much to theater that I was not able to. With having to work in a normal job, I needed to find a way to express my creativity in a different medium. I think was part of it. As far as getting burnt out, I think a lot of it too would have just been my friends wanting to make this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Because what would you say then is like the fundamental difference between screenwriting and being like a playwright? Then what would you say? Because you did say with Blood is Thicker, you were basically it was like practicing screenwriting. What's the main difference? What would you say?
Yeah, well, that's an interesting question. I think with the I just kind of stumbled into plays when I read Sam Shepard's plays, and I'm sorry. Ask me the question again. I apologize.
Oh no, no worries.
I lost my
Just
train of
like
thought.
that's perfectly fine. Just it was more like what's the difference between say writing War Boots versus Blood is Thicker? Much of a difference, or?
Okay, I see. Yeah. Well, what it was, I'm an autodidact, so everything is self-taught, and so I there's a bookstore here in America called Half Price Books. I don't know if they have that where you're at or not, but it's a wonderful bookstore where you can get all these books. So I that's kind of where I got my information on writing a play. In other words, I wrote a play and then I learned how. I went to a bookstore and read a little bit about it. Whenever I started producing my plays, I knew very little about it, so I had to read a lot about it. So after cramming myself with this information on plays, that's when I started doing plays. And then later, it was kind of the same thing. When I decided I wanted to write a screenplay, I didn't know how to format it, didn't know much about it. I knew I could tell a story, but the screenplay is like the blueprint. It all is based on the screenplay, and so that's when I just got some books on it, and I just learned how to format it. And so, yes, I started writing Blood is Thicker as simply an exercise on how to write a screenplay. I had no idea what the story was yet, had no idea who the characters were. I just got this instruction manual on writing screenplays, and I just started writing. So I thought, well, who'd be a good character? So I thought of my cousin, the Vietnam veteran hobo, who liked to hop freight trains. And so that was the first character. And at the time, there was a lot of racial tension in America, and there was a right-wing surge in militias and things like that. So, I needed some bad guys. So I created these white supremacists. Who were terrorists, but who were also dealing drugs, and so I just started putting that together, and then I kind of molded the other character a little on myself, he's like into Eastern religions and martial arts and stuff like that. Which I'm not a I certainly am not a devotee of that any more than just from afar. But that was kind of where the it transitioned from plays to screenplays. And then once I did that, I really enjoyed it. You know, I enjoyed the being able to create another form of art using another medium, so to speak. So it kind of opened up a world for me, really. And then after meeting David and Taylor, and because they're the film buffs, you know, they're cinephiles. They know more about it. They're like walking encyclopedias of film, which I was not.
So they helped you then basically like give you like ideas then, and obviously when you're in the rhythm then like, oh, I've got this character, I've got this character. It just did it get easier then, like writing it.
Yeah, really, I've the more you write, the more you learn how to write, and the better it gets. It's inevitable if you really devote yourself to something like that. So I feel like my writing continues to get better. My screenplays continue to get better, more interesting, more professionally written. Uh, so I think it's just repetition and doing things over and over, and just the love of telling a good story. In the end, I want to tell a good story. My ambition really is to be a famous novelist or something like that. And you know, someone like say John Steinbeck who can whip out of Mice and Men, you know, some little short novella, and it's a big hit. And you know, I always admired that someone who could just whip something together like that and make a fortune. And so, but I just got into movies kind of inadvertently, really.
I like that with your writing because like it's like all these themes in America again, like with the drifters and as you said the racial tensions. Are you like writing a book right now, or did you ever like release a book, or did it never come out?
Yes, well, I'm working on a book of short stories called Captain Save-A-Ho, and it's
Oh,
like
nice,
country
nice. Tell me more.
noir.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and uh, and also I just finished co-authoring a book with a friend of mine about working in the oil field. So, and that's kind of in the early stages of publication, or it's kind of in the makings of it being published soon. But it's really all I can say about that for now. But yeah,
Absolutely.
you know, I hope to get better and better at it.
Yes, just to clarify, at the end of the interview, you'll be able to plug as much things as you can. So don't worry, we'll be able to find out where we can read your stories and watch your movies. So let's go talk about your film company then. When did you start the film company Dilligaff then?
Yeah, I started Dilligaff in 1998, right after I closed down my theater company, Thin Dime Theater. I started Dilligaff Productions, and oddly enough, Dilligaff Productions was named also after my cousin Joe. You know, the military loves its
Ah,
acronyms, and so my cousin Joe told me about the Dilligaff acronym. I think he might have even had a tattoo of it on his arm, and so I used that in honor of him, kind of an homage to him.
that's really cool because that was actually going to be my next question. What the algorithm actually, sorry, what the words actually stood for.
Yes, well, one can Google it, and it's pretty apparent what it. But if you just to be perfectly honest, Dilligaff stands for "Do I look like I give a fuck?" And that's kind of the attitude I took to making my movies. I knew that some people would be shocked, some people would be offended, some people would see that I was obviously a novice and was a wannabe, but you know, I did not give a fuck. I was going to do this. I was going to try to walk with the big boys and make my own little movie. And you know, I would show them. That was part of my motivation. I would show these people, you know, almost like I had a
That's how
chip
you
on my
succeed.
shoulder. And
That's how you succeed in life. You don't give a fuck. So that is fantastic.
well, thank you.
Roughly then, what's the time period just between you starting Dilligaff and then filming Thicker Than Blood?
Let's see. It was immediate. I actually founded that company, started it for the very express purpose of filming Blood is Thicker. I knew I would have to get a company name, a DBA, doing business as. So I had to go through all the motions I once again learning on the fly about all of this stuff. It's all been one big journey with no one really pointing things out and mentoring me. Didn't really have a mentor per se. I just went to the bookstore and learned it myself. And I had some talented friends who also had a love of film and the arts and wonderful intellect. So having that combination, I was able to produce what I did. And so that's how Dillagaff started. Just these crazy people thinking they can make a movie. One wise man told me, he said, Les, you were just stupid enough to think you could do it. You ended up doing it. And
And you
so
did it. So
that's part of it.
You proved them wrong. So because you did do it. So
yeah. In the end,
yes,
I hope I did it. I've purportedly made 3 movies, but some people might say that's up for debate whether they actually qualify as movies. But the audiences love them. Civilians love my movies. Film snobs may turn their noses up at them, but the civilians love them.
I was gonna say, actually, I did forget to mention, because there's footage of war boots again shown in Guerrilla Filmmaker. How much of that footage exists of the actual play? Then, would you ever consider uploading it on your YouTube channel? Or
I would like to. The quality is very poor. I would probably need some sort of technical help on it, maybe, or some sort of enhancement, some clever editing. But I certainly wouldn't be against it. I would love to do that. I would love to put all my plays. Probably my best filmed play is Hillbilly Karma. I had a really good camera and
yes,
did a lot of close-ups and stuff like that. And I want to also mention part of my team also is my production designer, Mitchell Self. And without
hmm
Mitchell, none of it could have happened. Mitchell in all my movies built all the sets and designed them. If I needed a prop, I could tell Mitchell, and he would be on it. And I could have that prop. I would know that I would have it the next morning, that evening, whenever I needed it. So, I can't exclude Mitchell from my team of artists who have made all this happen.
fantastic. Because I am gonna ask you about the brilliant people involved in your films in a moment. So, with Blood is Thicker, then. You said that you actually filmed with one light. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes. Yeah. There's the anecdote about the people thinking that was rather odd. We were only going to use one light. They could tell we were novices and probably did not know what we were doing. But we did manage to make a movie with one light. Where was the point when you kind of realized this is going to be difficult? Oh, that's a good question. I think when we got out on location and I didn't have any bad guys, where I talk about in the movie, I had to, I realized I didn't have all the locations yet. I didn't have it cast all the way, but people are already there ready to go. So I realized, I was going to have to really get crafty somehow to do this. And I realized that more was expected of me than I was able to do. And so, other people, luckily I had other people show up, like Jimmy Franks. When he showed up, he was our arms master. And he's interviewed in the movie as well. He was our stunt man, our arms master, and just someone we could go to with problems. So when you make a movie, people kind of show up, and they kind of rescued me. But it was at that point in time that I realized I was over my head, and this was going to be really hard. And I was having to exert myself physically and in the heat, and also a lot of people thought my demeanor was abrasive or unprofessional because I was so stressed out. I wasn't the kindest of people. I may have snapped at people, without meaning to and stuff, simply because I was under the gun and wasn't able to couch my requests in kinder terms, having to do things on the spot.
It happens. It can be very stressful, but I mean, as long as you didn't, no one went across the line, really. So I mean, that's really the main thing at the end of the day. I'm going to actually say a few names to you, Les. So I'm going to do a little bit of a quick fire round, and I'm going to mention some people that were involved in your film, and I want you to describe them in a few words if you can.
Okay.
So let's start off. Gordon Fox.
Gordon Fox. He's a wonderful gentleman. He was our preacher. In two of my movies, I had preachers. In my first movie, Blood is Thicker, which won Best Feature Shot in Texas.
Well done.
I I was able to create this character, and he fulfilled it so well. He just, he's a wonderful human being as well as a wonderful actor, and he was very dedicated to those characters. And he kind of, as is expressed in our documentary, he kind of was inducted into, or rather was became more immersed in the film industry through our help, through our independent films. So he kind of got his start around the same time we did. He had done a lot of theater, but he had not done that many movies yet. So we were very happy to get Gordon. He was quite a find.
I know I did say quick fire round, and I'm gonna go on a tangent, so very sorry. One thing that sticks out at me about Gordon is how he said that he bought a jacket specifically for one of those films, and he still has it to this day. That really stuck out to me. It's like, because you can tell this film meant so much to him, and it's really wholesome seeing that.
Thank you, thank you. Yeah, that's a wonderful thing about this movie. He was able for the last 27 years to use that suit, and so that's wonderful.
Yeah. Now we go on to Michael Ray Davis. He's a pretty big part of the documentary. I understand he sadly passed away, but he sounded like he was
Yes.
really dedicated to his craft, to say the least.
Yes, Michael Ray, he was one of a kind. He was like this Texas born and bred giant of a character, and very driven at his craft and a method actor. He would immerse himself in characters, and you never knew what you were going to get. But he was a wonderful team player. I will say this: he was a bit chagrined when he realized, that I didn't know what I was doing, and I guess he could readily see that. And I think he stayed mad at me more than I realized at the time. I think he was rather angry with me, and I just kind of blew it off. I didn't have time to address it really, but he was civil about it, and he did what he was supposed to do. But he's a wonderful actor and wonderful human being as well. He could, I think, do any role, and he was a big asset to our movie. I don't think anyone could have portrayed that sheriff the way he did, and he loved portraying that corrupt sheriff. And I think he really brought it to life. And I'm just so pleased that he was able to do that for us. It's very sad, though, about Blood is Thicker, is that it took me so long to make it that the people who brought so much to it have unfortunately died before they even got to see it or to know that it was completed. A lot of them were so disappointed, as were all of us, at the delays and just the hand that fate dealt us regarding that movie. But so that's a bit. It's kind of sad that he did not get to see that character that he portrayed.
Perhaps, but I think it's quite good that you even came back to it because, like, I'm not really a filmmaker, but years ago I actually did this interview for like this local pub of mine that's near my home actually, and I got some details wrong in it, and I couldn't bring myself to release it because like there was just wrong information, which is my fault basically, and the footage is kind of lost now. So I get that frustration, but as long as you still have it, I would say that's the main thing, really.
Thank you.
And now we go on to Stephen Brody.
Stephen Brody, yes. Yeah, Stephen Brody is a great actor, and he brings a lot to the roles. And he's a good friend as well. We stay in contact. And in having my baby, he really brought that character to life. And he made him more human. I was going to make that character more abrasive and kind of mean and more stoic. But Steven saw the need to make him more human, more likable, somehow, you know, portray him as not so much the bad guy, where I had a more of a rough exterior. So I think Steven was way ahead of me on that in that character, and that actually worked well. And but there's a lot of ways in which Steven came through for me, and as he mentions in the documentary, he filmed a lot of those interiors in the bunker because I was either line producing or working at my job in the real world. So I owe so much to Steven and to his co-star Vicky O'Brien because they stayed with me for 3 years. We somehow managed to finish that movie. Yeah. And I might call them and we'd schedule some shoots and maybe a week later schedule more. So it was done very piecemeal, but they stuck with it, and I cannot thank them enough.
Absolutely agreed. Another very important figure in this is Samuel Rodin, who was the producer.
Absolutely. Sam Rodin. Yeah. You know, when I first met Sam, it was when I first moved to Dallas, and he had a band called Early Jitters. You know, he played guitar, and and he had these cassette tapes with his music, and it was very good. He's a great musician as well. Sam's a polymath in many ways with his many talents, and so we kind of developed that bond there through our love of music, and then when I told him about my play, and Sam's very resourceful. He's in the oil business, and he's been in the oil business for about 40 years, and so he's been able to finance a lot of my stuff. You know, not big finance, and he's not like some oil tycoon. He's really a working man like the rest of us, but he's able to drill wells, you know, to get royalties, to have a little extra cash for artistic pursuits like his music and stuff. And Sam was kind enough to invest in my talents. And I can't thank Sam enough for that. And he's been a lifelong friend. And I hope we can make more movies someday. I hope, you know, that we can continue to create things together.
Now let's go on to Dwight Mervo. He plays one of the hobos, doesn't he?
He does indeed. Yeah, yeah. Dwight Murray, he was an actor I met. He was doing community theater in Mesquite, Texas, and so he came aboard one of my stage plays. I had an actor bow out mid-production, so I had to get a replacement, and he filled that role for me in my play Hillbilly Karma, and that's how I met Dwight. And so when I started filming Blood and Sticker, I relied on so many of my people from the theater, the actors, the crew, that sort of thing. So he was one of them, and I immediately saw the potential for him to be the hobo. So I was very pleased to be able to get Dwight to do that, and he plays that character very well. He's a wonderful gentleman as well.
Yeah, no, he really pulled that role off, honestly. I would like to see more of him, actually. Now, you say a few times during the making of your films that you did, as you said, stupid things to basically get it filmed. Anytime you ever got into trouble for it, like where you filmed where you weren't supposed to film, or want to explain?
You know, I can't think of any time I actually got caught, you know, doing anything I wasn't supposed to do or getting into any trouble. I can't think of anything. It escapes me at the moment, but nothing severe. Now, I do know that the police had to go to the nature preserve in Plano, Texas, because one actor was running around with looked like an assault rifle. He had this woman tied to him with a rope. He had kidnapped her. So that was the storyline. So these people jogging and walking their dogs didn't know that. So the police did come down there. And that was at one point in time where I was line producer and wasn't on the set. I had another director at the time. So we had to make a sign that said film crew. And to hold up when people walked by, they could see that this was a film crew. This was not, you know, actually happening. So that was the closest we ever got, I guess, to getting in trouble.
And also, because I remember you saying, like, you actually had, like, almost the exact same police outfits and police vehicles. And it's like, so again, you were able to get away with that. Like, no one thought that, oh, these guys are, like, impersonating police officers.
Yes, we were so lucky in that regard because in the county in Texas where I grew up, Parker County, when we spoke with them, they were just very kind, and they knew I had grown up in Poolville, one of the neighboring small hamlets in Parker County, and so you know, and also people like movies. Everyone wants to get involved, kind of, and they may have been hesitant at first, but I think they just thought, well, you know, he's making a movie, he's from our community, we'll help him out. And so they were very kind. They let us go to their supply place where they get their uniforms, and our guys were fitted out in the same uniforms they're fitted out in, the same patches. They let us borrow their patches on their sleeves. All the regalia that they had was authentic. And so when we started filming that, I asked, hey, can we use one of your squad cars? And so they said, sure, not a problem. So anytime I needed a squad car, we were filming on various highways and filming in front of the jail, out in the woods where we needed squad cars. And so I cannot thank the Sheriff's Department in Parker County enough. The mayor at the time, the Chamber of Commerce, they were all so very kind and generous with their people, with their time, with their resources. And I am very indebted to them, and I cannot thank them enough. They were very kind people and wonderful people.
Because I should say, there are some films I look at my channel that have somewhat troubled production histories, where it goes to some pretty bad places. There's a film I look at called Maidstone, where the actor Rip Torn actually gets into a fight with Norman Mailer, the director on it. I don't get that sense from your film, though, because I get it, like, the community just combined together and they helped each other out. Like, with the exception of one incident, we'll talk about that later, I get more of a sense like the community just was friendly and there to help you. Do you agree with that? One day I'll make a video without mentioning Rip Torn. Today's not that day, though.
Yeah, for the most part, yeah, everyone helped. And I don't recall in these small communities having any problems with the locals in any way. They were very eager to help, and just kind of, if they didn't want to help, they stayed out of the way. And so it was very welcoming. I felt, very lucky to be able to film in such a small community with people who were kind people, with a rural attitude, and just very nice people.
That is really nice. So I now want you to paint me the picture. It's a long day of filming, a little bit frustrating sometimes in that hot weather. You said that you'd treat your crew to some food. Sometimes you'd go out to eat in diners. And you also said sometimes your mom would cook for you. What was your favorite go-to meal that you couldn't wait for at the end of the day?
For me, I'm pretty easy on things like that. My go-to meal is going to be like a hamburger, something like that,
Yeah.
hamburger and fries. If
Can't go
not
wrong.
that, just but I don't specifically recall uh, even having that much time to focus on the food. Just normal things
Mhm.
one might get in a restaurant. But that is one thing I learned about movies is that's part you have to feed and house your crew and your actors. And I
Hmm.
didn't realize that when I first got into movies, but that was really our biggest expense, I believe, was housing everyone in motels. But it's totally
Oh, yeah.
essential that they be rested and close to the location. And so that was a big part of that. But I don't really have any meals that stick out really.
Hmm.
Something
So,
fast and easy.
yes, would you say, though, when you went to that abandoned diner with all the moldy food and the vermin, was the food you had better than than was there? Or
Certainly, indeed, yes. That was another very lucky thing for me when I got to film in that cafe, which incidentally now is a gym where people go to work out. 28
wow,
years,
ironic.
27 years later. Yeah, but yes, the it was so hot in there because it was about 100 degrees outside, and it was, probably 90 degrees inside with humidity, and all we had were the ceiling fans, and we had to keep everything closed up. So I really felt sorry for my crew and for my actor. My heart wept for them, but at the same time, we had to get the shot. So, but yeah, that
Hmm.
cafe was really a gold mine of finding, in order to film those scenes. Because without an authentic cafe, we couldn't have faked that.
Of course, yeah, no, like very good location you found there, and as you said, you were very lucky. Now, you don't need to go into too much detail about this. I don't expect names, obviously. However, you explain at some point during this film that there was a mutiny that happened where three people had creative differences and they like try and take over the film. Do you want to talk about that?
Well, yeah, I can a little bit. We split up for creative differences, essentially. But I think part of the problem was because I was so woefully unprepared. They saw that the first couple of days of filming, and I must confess also part of the problem. I think some people found me intimidating for whatever reason. I think part of the problem was I also made the stupid decision to quit smoking cigarettes at about the same time I was going to make this movie. So there were probably times when I was a raving lunatic. And so I can understand maybe why people were taken aback. But for the most part, I think the split up occurred because of just for artistic reasons and for the fact that some people found me abrasive. And I think also they were disillusioned because they thought they were going to be working on a movie, and they found out instead, there's some guy out here trying to make a movie who doesn't, in essence, know what he's doing. Although, in fact, I did know what I was doing because I know that in this world, whatever you want to do, there's a book out there somewhere that tells you how to do it. And of course, in today's world as well, there's you can get on the internet and find almost anything. So even though I was teaching myself on the fly, at the same time, you know, a lot of my failures were showing up, and so people, I think, and maybe just had enough. The people who were involved had enough, and it was a power play in essence as well. But I can't really get into that aspect of it.
That's fine. Yeah, like things happen sometimes, and it was like, was that like a lesson for you in terms of that, or?
Absolutely, yeah, it was a learning experience. You know, I learned that you know what I would have to temper my disposition, and that I would have to sometimes you have to coddle these actors and your crew, because if you're making a movie, if you get halfway through the movie, then actors or crew, they can kind of make power plays because they know you can't fire them, because then you've lost half your movie. You can't go hire new actors. You can't go reshoot all that stuff you've already shot. So they kind of have weight on you. You know, they can force you into things you may not want to do. So there's just such a weird dynamic in making movies. I mean, I could go on all day about the dynamics of you know, clashing egos, and having the equipment or not having the equipment, being broke, you know, living on frozen burritos and frozen pizzas, you know, stuff like that to get this movie made. So there's just such a confluence of things happening that it can be very chaotic, and perhaps I come off as a little abrasive.
I see. And that leads me to my next question, actually, because you say that, like in the description now, that you stopped filming, Blood is Thicker at some point. Like, was it just a combination of things, like you just said, like the money issues? Was it just the heat? Like, was there anything in particular where there was a final straw?
Yeah, well, the thing with Blood is Thicker is, yes, you know, because we had bitten off more than we could chew. We were going to make a movie, but we didn't. We knew it was going to be hard, but we didn't know until in the end just how hard it was going to be, and we kind of fell short, and we basically ran out of funds, and plus people had to get back to their lives in the real world. You know, we
Mm.
most of us had taken off 2 weeks, a little over 2 weeks of our lives to make Blood is Thicker, and as much as David and I and Taylor and I tried to keep it going and keep it financed and everything, I think also our executive producer Sam Roden had kind of left with a bad taste in his mouth because we weren't able to finish it. We lost some of the
Mm.
sound reels, which is an egregious error. You know, some of the film as well wasn't ideal, and uh, so we reached a point where we had to get on with our lives, and so I kept all the footage, and I thought to myself, one of these days we'll have more money, we'll have more time, and we're going to make this movie. I didn't know it would be 26 years later, but that's kind of how it turned out.
Better late than ever. When was so after Thick Blood is Thick? Was it? Did you then start having my baby, or have I missing another film somewhere?
No, there was 8 years in between Blood is Thicker and Having My Baby, and when I decided to make Having My Baby, I thought, you know, I must be a masochist wanting to make another movie, to put myself through this again, to actually think that I can do this, you know, after one movie already failed. And so a lot of people as well were like, you know, he doesn't know how to make a movie. You know, why didn't he finish Blood is Thicker? Why is he doing this movie? So there were a lot of factors, a lot of variables to weigh. But, you know, I just thought, let's just do it, man. And I had some good people behind me, skilled people, some of my same crew and people from my first movie, and they were gung ho. So I just thought, you know, let's do this thing. But there were actually 8 years in between that.
Do you see that as like a chance at redemption in a weird way? Like, I've got to do this for myself. Was it more like that feeling you had?
Yeah, I think it was a big part of that. I think redemption, and just, you know, wanting to be creative again, and that's also one of the reasons I finished it. Why I wasn't going to give up is because not only redemption, but I was not going to let that mutiny ruin my movie. I was not going to lose. I was bound and determined that I was going to do whatever it took to finish this movie, just to prove my naysayers wrong, just to prove the people who wanted to sabotage my movie to make a point. You know, I was going to try to be triumphant.
That's what you got to do sometimes. It's the burden of dreams, as they say. So.
Absolutely.
So and I let's go back to Blood is Thicker then. Like so as you said, I was gonna ask earlier what inspired you to return to filming it, but as you said then it was more of a case of you were sitting on some footage, you lost a few sound reels, and you I assume you had a bit more money where you could revisit. Is that right?
Yes, the way I was able to complete the movie 27 years later was I inherited some money from an aunt.
Mm.
She worked at the Washington Post, and she died, I believe, at age 91. And I inherited a little bit of money. It wasn't much, but it was enough to finish my movies, my two movies.
Mm.
So that really helped. And so that was a big part of it. And also the fact that through from those 26 years, there was newer technology in reproducing sound and reproducing video, new AI methods to restore missing sound and stuff like that. And because my DP and editor David Dixon, he was very savvy to all that stuff, and so he was basically through his computer and editing savvy able to resurrect Blood is Thicker from the grave 26 years later. Once we had the footage digitized, he was able to work his magic. And so, kudos to him because he's really always been the glue holding it together because of his technical expertise and his movie knowledge.
Round of applause for
He's
Mr.
very
Dixon.
modest though. He doesn't like to hear that, but it's the truth.
Absolutely. So fair play to him. And that the idea of redemption, by the way, when you made Having My Baby, as I said, you won the most ambitious film award. What did that mean to you?
It was wonderful. It was wonderful being invited to that and being. We actually flew to Vancouver, Washington, a couple of us to watch it, and so I was proud of that. It's kind of like most ambitious means you didn't quite make it. You tried kind of. It was almost like what it wasn't the best prize one could imagine, but I certainly was happy for it, very proud of it, and I have no shame in winning the most ambitious film. Very proud of that. And I hope to resurrect Having My Baby. We hope someday to be able to possibly re-edit that and to come up with a better cut. We have the ways and means now to do that.
The director's cut would it be?
Wonderful. That would be great.
And again, like when you won the Best Action Film Award for Blood is Thicker, what was it then? Did you submit it to the film festivals, or did they contact you? Did they somehow find you then?
Yeah, we've submitted it to as many as we can. We look at all the different film festivals out there, and we determine which has the criteria that would best fit our exploitation type, low budget films and movies. So we just do that, and as we're able to get enough funds, we just send it out to these various festivals, and then they contact us later. So it gets selected, and they all watch it, and then if you're lucky, you will win the prize. So, for instance, Blood is Thicker. We only found out last week, I believe it was, that Blood is Thicker won for Best Feature Made in Texas at the Austin Indie Fest, which is really a great feather in our cap.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's street cred, so we're very happy. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'll talk more about where you can see Blood is Thicker later. Now, on the page for Dillagaff Productions, in the description, and I thought this was really funny, it says, "We are the film production company that your mom warned you about," which I think is really funny. Tell the audience, what do you think makes a good film?
Well, to me, I love so many types of movies. Like I love a love story, I love a good mystery. I love science fiction. I have scripts actually I've written in every genre one could imagine. But
Mm.
but so it's hard to pinpoint anything, but I do love exploitation movies. I do love watching people with maybe a smaller budget than normal create a work of art. That to me is part of the charm, part of the artistic pursuit is doing more with less. There's a certain mystique to that I find interesting. To answer it more explicitly, I like movies with bullets and babes, what they call, if I can be very frank, tits and ass. I
Yeah.
want nudity, I want violence, I want that sort of thing. It sounds sexist in today's uh, uh, sterilized world, and which I believe is rightly so. One can only be so graphic without crossing borders. But no, I think that violence and sex are the two driving forces of life, unfortunately, or whatever. But so any artistic way of portraying that, I find fulfilling and rewarding.
Maybe it is somewhat outdated, yeah, but I think you can never go too wrong with tits and ass. I always say so.
I'm glad you agree.
Yes. Now, having my baby, as you said, is actually on your YouTube channel. I'll be sure to link that in, well, I guess when I release this video, my own version of this video.
Thanks.
When can we expect Blood is Thicker to come out then? Because have you uploaded on the channel? Are you going to upload it soon, or are you still editing something?
Well, it's still in a couple of festivals, so we thought we would wait until we get the notifications whether or not it's been accepted these festivals. And I think we will end up uploading it to one channel or another where it can be, hopefully soon. I'm not sure where we're going to, which channel yet we're going to put it on or how we're going to do that. That's more David's expertise, but we're going to do that soon, I hope, where audiences can watch it one way or the other.
It's the same goal then for Guerrilla Filmmaker, where it's like you send it to a few festivals, excuse me, so you're just kind of waiting on that.
Yes, Guerrilla Filmmaker as well. We're going to wait till it makes the festival circuit and find out what the results are. And probably, I would hope within at least, say, 6 to 10 months, we'll have it where all three of our movies can be watched online in one form or another. I hope to.
Well, I can't wait for that, just to tell you. I really cannot wait for that at all, because
Thank you.
and obviously, as you said, you grew up on spaghetti westerns. You talked about your philosophy on what makes a good film. Any films you like nowadays? Like, any thoughts on like any favorite directors you have nowadays? Do you go out to cinema often or not as much?
Yeah, I still try to get out to the cinema. My favorite directors are like David Lynch, Oliver Stone, uh, Sam Peckinpah,
Good
and
picks.
I'm sure there's a few others. They're not coming to mind immediately, but those I guess are my big three. And some of the newer filmmakers whose names escape me now, I like. Uh, I really liked One Battle After Another by Paul Thomas Anderson. I thought that was great. I really
Oh,
liked
me too.
Hamnet. Uh, I loved The Bride. I thought that was great.
Mm.
Very, very art house.
Yeah, I'm very interested. You brought up One Battle After Another, because that film has a very, I guess, mixed response online, mainly because I think right wingers didn't like how they were portrayed in that film. Do you think some people would have that same feeling with Thicker Than Blood? Because your film is, adamantly anti-racist, obviously. Because again, like one of the actors who played, I think his name was Tiny, was talking about how that character is more accurate than people think there are. And you know what? I agree. Actually, I was actually quite scared seeing him on screen in the documentary.
Yeah, I think it's a touchy subject, and but I think it's not easy these days to portray, or rather, it's not very difficult these days to portray white supremacists as the bad guys. They obviously are, and if people are offended by that, they're obviously hanging around with the wrong people.
Yeah.
So, without getting too involved in that, I just think that uh, that audiences are very fickle, and you're never going to make all of them happy. Some people will find offense one way or another, and so I think as a filmmaker, you can't really think about that too much. You can't read your own press because it's going to be nothing even close to reality.
Absolutely. I actually think, if anything, because Thicker Than Blood was you started making it like what, 1998. I think it's still somewhat timeless in a weird way, because it's like, wow, people like that are actually do exist now. It's crazy.
I agree. I'm glad you picked up on that because absolutely, it couldn't be more timely now. Oddly enough, it's like a
Yeah.
time capsule that is almost prescient because now we see what it has brought us. We see the culmination of that later. So yeah, I think it's an important movie in that aspect that it does have a moral story to it that I think is on the right path.
Yeah, there's like some people years ago, I'm sure some people would have said, "Oh, this is like too far," as in like people don't actually act like this. Like, no, they do. It's a weird way. Like, it's they say satire is dead now because stereotypes basically exist now of these people.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
But
It's
yes, Bo,
in today's world, it's really hard to to figure all that out.
Les, it's been a pleasure speaking to you and also Mr. Dixon in the background. So I have a few questions before we go. Do you have any messages for any aspiring filmmakers out there?
Yeah, I guess I would. Not that I'm not sure how much it's worth, my advice, but I would just, just some of the normal cliches, never give up and do all that. But as well, just read a lot. Reading is fundamental to everything. If you like movies, read about filmmakers, your favorite filmmakers, and study everything that you can about it, and don't feel like just because you're a normal Joe that somehow it is beyond you, because it's not. But really, the best advice is, somehow at the end of the day, you have to have money, and so, but it's not absolutely essential. But if you really want to have a good, need not a lot of money, but some money, and that's going to be the biggest challenge, is finding funding.
Again, do I look like I give a fuck? That's really the motto you need. So, and speaking about reading, you mentioned earlier about some books you were co-authoring. Obviously, I know you can't say much about it, but you're gonna release anything about that soon, anytime?
Yeah, well, I can probably say a little bit more about it. It's a book. It's Sam's book. My executive producer wrote a book about the oil field, and so I edited it and co-authored it with him. And it's called Total Depth: The Adventures of a Texas Wildcatter. And there is a university press that said they want to publish it in the near future, and the steps are being taken. The steps are in place to see that that happens. But I can't, say too much on it because it's still in its early stages. And no one's signed on any dotted lines yet. But we have gotten a verbal uh, affirmation that they are going to publish his book at this very important university press. And so we're excited about that. Hopefully, I will have more information on that later. So, yeah, Sam's book on wildcatting, drilling for oil in Texas, is it's a very great story. Similar to Landman. Landman's a very popular show you may be aware of. And this is kind of Sam's version of Landman, which he had been planning to write for 30 years. He had notes on it for 30 years. He and I both had kind of started notes on it.
Well, I hope that goes I hope that goes well for you, Les. Again, it's been a pleasure speaking to you both. So, speaking to everyone watching this video now, to quote Sean Evans, this camera and your camera in the back there, tell us what you're doing now. Obviously, just recap on all the things that you're releasing.
Well, I want to thank you so much for having me, Risa, for having me on your show. It's a very wonderful show. I've seen some of your clips and stuff, and I love
Oh, no,
the Rip Torn stuff. That was great. And
thank you.
so, what I'm working on now is just, oh yeah, let's see. I'm trying to get a biker movie off the ground. My stage play, Dead or in Huntsville, that there are clips of. Uh, I I don't want to say we're not in pre-production, but we're trying to assemble a team to get a very cheap biker movie made called Dead or in Huntsville. And so I'm not sure if we can get it off the ground, but we're certainly going to try. And we've been able to do so in the
Exactly.
past, not knowing what the future holds, but we're hoping our luck is still holding.
Never give up. So, fair play. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Reese.
It was an absolute pleasure speaking with these two gentlemen. We had a nice little chat about Rip Torn after this video because, of course we did. If you're interested in the body of work from these two gentlemen, the link for their YouTube channel is in the description right now. Give their videos a watch. Hopefully they'll be releasing a lot more content soon. I would still recommend you watch their trailers though, just because of how interesting their films are and just how interesting the production histories are. This interview with Mr. Branson makes me appreciate Guerrilla Filmmaker even more, just because of how honest he is. He's honest in saying that he wasn't a filmmaker, he's just a shipping clerk who wanted to make a film. As of right now, Les Branson's film Having My Baby is currently on the channel, but as soon as Thicker Than Blood is released as well as Guerrilla Filmmaker, I highly recommend you check those films out. Guerrilla Filmmaker gets my highest recommendation, because I should note, in this interview, we didn't get to talk about everyone that was involved in the making of Les Branson's films. I mean, there's so many characters, like for example, Mary McGrew, who had to do makeup in a cow pasture. There's so many people that put their hearts and souls into the making of these films, and I want to thank every single one of them. Well, maybe not the ones with the mutiny, but that's besides the point. Just check out this channel, guys. It's so fun and so entertaining. Thank you.